to try civilians. The Supreme Court prescribed the prosecution of civilians in the tribunals in January, saying they lack legal competence to conduct criminal trials in a fair and impartial manner. Local and international rights campaigners have long accused Uganda's government of using military courts to pursue political opponents of President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power for almost 40 years. His aides have denied this, saying only civilians who use guns for political violence are prosecuted in such tribunals. The Khoisan leaders of South Africa say Khoi and San communities have been excluded from the upcoming First National Convention meant to kickstart the national dialogue. The convention is set to take place in Pretoria this Friday and Saturday. Grukwa community leader Stanley Peterson says Khoi and San communities continue to be marginalized by government. Peterson elaborates.
As the national Khoisan leaders of South Africa are very aggrieved what's happening in South Africa today. In CODESA, we were not part of CODESA. Now there's a national dialogue. The Khoi and the San people are also not present. They're not even been mentioned. So how can we talk about a South Africa that is democratic and non-racial if every time we are being deliberately excluded? In the old apartheid years, we were excluded. In the new democratic life, we are also excluded.
The 5 accused in the murder case of South Africa's rapper Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Tibelo Tibbs Motswane has been adjourned to the 19th of June next year for the continuation of the pre-trial conference. Forbes and Motswane were gunned down outside a popular restaurant in Florida Road in Durban 2 years ago. The pre-trial conference has been postponed to allow the judge president to appoint a judge and to iron out any matters before the main trial commences. Nontlagani Pomakwaza has the story.
During the pre-trial conference, Judge Jacqueline Hendricks called out the states for yet again failing to furnish the defense with documents. This time, it included the affidavits of 45 witnesses who are expected to testify. Last month, the state told the court that out of concern for the safety of witnesses, it was reluctant to hand over the affidavits, as witnesses claimed they have been intimidated.
Supporters of Palestinians in South Africa have gathered outside St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town to protest against the killing of journalists in Gaza. The group says Israel is deliberately targeting networks critical of its occupation of Palestine and has called on the media worldwide to report accurately and without fear or favour. Gift of the Givers founder Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman.
We're calling on the media throughout the world to start challenging governments to make a decisive stand inside Gaza. We're calling on media to ask to enforce the United Nations to send troops in the ground in Gaza, like what was done in Bosnia. Safe havens were created. People were protected. The doors were open. Neighboring countries need to open the doors so aid can go in unlimited, unconditionally.
Wildfires continue to afflict parts of Europe, including the Iberian Peninsula, Greece and the Balkan countries, amid an ongoing heatwave. Thousands of people have been evacuated and some roads have been closed. The BBC's Danny Aberhard has the story.
High temperatures and a drought mean much of Europe is facing an extreme fire risk. Mediterranean countries are bearing the brunt. In Spain, the emergency services and troops are battling dozens of blazes, including in the northwest. A volunteer firefighter in Leon was killed when 2 fronts suddenly joined. In Greece, homes in Patras are threatened. One volunteer has described doomsday-like scenes. Other fires are burning on the tourist islands of Zakynthos and Chios.
Recapping the top story this hour, Uganda's biggest opposition party, the National Unity Platform, has filed a case in the Constitutional Court to nullify a newly enacted law that reinstated the right of military tribunals to try civilians. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, the Cincinnati Open 2025 prize money has been revealed for the ultimate winners. And the 2025 FIBA Women's AfroBasket winning Nigerian team was paid handsomely for their exploits. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 7 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Lovely to have you with us once again as we convene, as we do every single weekday, for a focus on business on the African continent. A lot on your agenda this afternoon. We'll take a look at the Tax Indaba, which is an annual meeting, an annual gathering summit that's been taking place in Johannesburg, South Africa, in the backdrop of economic stagnation and national debt that's been experienced in South Africa. What are the propositions that will lead to what has been dubbed as a bold tax reform? We'll be looking at that this afternoon, as well as mining and agriculture in Botswana, the meeting of the Africa 50 general shareholders taking place in Mozambique, Maputo, and a wrap-up of the leading market and financial stories. And APSA investment strategist will be joining us. That's Lindile Malchas, will unpack the latest performances of global and local markets. And as usual, this is our time, this is our show, it is our business, and your business is our business. So let us know what is happening in your part of the world. What are the major news stories that you believe would be of interest to not only those on the African continent, but those in the diaspora as well, who have an interest in Africa and Africa's business? You can send us your news stories at Channel Africa, and you'll find us on www.channelafrica.co.za, or you could email us at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. On X, Instagram, and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are on Channel Africa.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
We take you now to Zimbabwe, where the Reserve Bank says a roadmap for transitioning from a multi-currency system to a domestic currency by 2030 is coming in the month of November. This plan aims to ensure business continuity as well as stability as the country tries to regain control of its monetary policy. It needs to manage inflation as well as foster long-term economic growth. While ordinary citizens remain pessimistic, the RBZ, which is the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, notes that the strong US dollar has made local products less competitive globally and limited the government's ability to influence economic growth. More from John Kasim, who is our correspondent based in Harare, Zimbabwe.
The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is set to announce a detailed roadmap in November for the country's transition from its current multi-currency system to a single domestic currency by 2030. Zimbabwe is currently operating under a multi-currency regime dominated by the US dollar and the new Zimbabwe gold currency. The country officially adopted the US dollar-dominated system in 2009 to combat hyperinflation, but the RBZ now believes the US dollar is too strong for a developing economy, hindering local growth. Despite past attempts to revert to the single currency, which were derailed by high inflation, the RBZ points to recent economic stability as a sign of progress. According to the Zimbabwe National Statistics Agency, month-on-month ZiG inflation has been stable and below 1% for the past 3 months. RBZ says this stability has led to increased public confidence and greater use of the ZiG, with its share of electronic transaction rising from 26% in April 2024 to over 40% in June 2025. However, the RBZ's recent announcement that banks will soon be asked to cap US dollar lending by 2030 has created uncertainty. An unnamed accountant speaking to Channel Africa expressed concern.
Don't want to just wake up and say it up in straight into ZiG, because we have a history with these things where people, once that currency pronouncement was made and then value was lost in local currencies, the local currency started to lose value. So I doubt they are going to repeat that same mistake. So it will be interesting in November to see what are the details of the de-dollarization plan, because they have to do something to make sure there is a balance between maintaining macroeconomic stability and respecting existing contracts that are denominated in US dollars. You don't want that situation of banks raiding foreign currency accounts that have US dollars and just telling people to write convert my US dollars in your armor zig.
The RBZ remains confident that by 2030, Zimbabwe's economy will have the necessary fundamentals to support a monocurrency, low inflation, and highly productive economic sector. The country's economy is projected to grow by 6% this year, a significant increase from the 2% expansion in 2024. Despite claims of increased production in the manufacturing sector, citizens note that the local goods remain uncompetitive, driving consumers towards imported products. This is a significant issue as Zimbabwe imports goods worth an estimated 10 billion each year. Ordinary Zimbabweans are urging the RBZ to ensure the de-dollarization plan protects foreign currency accounts and respects existing US dollar denominated contracts such as salaries, pensions, and loans. Economic commentator Clemens Mutambo spoke on these issues.
I mean, it's known that the US dollar has become very, very trusted currency by the masses and by the generality of the people, particularly the business world and the general transacting public. And it will be very difficult for the business world and the general transacting public to shift their trust to the local currency given what has happened in the past. The local currency has lost value in so many times, and people have borne the brunt of the loss of value in the past, and that has really caused so many challenges and problems.
In Harare, Zimbabwe, this is John Kasim for Channel Africa News.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 14 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. Now, the 3-day 12th Annual South Africa Institute of Taxation, Tax Indaba, wrapped up this afternoon, bringing together South Africa's leading tax experts. There were policy makers as well in attendance, some industry professionals too. And this is all against a backdrop of rising national debt and economic stagnation. The Indaba served as a critical platform for dialogue on a bold tax reform, which is what South Africa has stated that it needs. With South Africa's fiscal future hanging in the balance, this year's event marked a pivotal moment in shaping the national conversation around sustainable economic policy. Let's gain some insights on exactly what it is that transpired and some of the key highlights coming out of the summit. And for this, we're joined by the acting Deputy Chief Executive Officer at the South African Institute of Taxation, that's Kitumetse Sesana. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Thank you for having me, Thami. I look forward to unpacking this topic with you.
No, first and foremost, how would you sum up the Indaba's engagement since it started on the 11th of August?
I think it was a resounding success. This year's Indaba obviously was against the backdrop of a budget that was failed to be delivered not once, not twice. We only got it right the third time. So it's been quite a crazy fiscal year that we have seen this year. So the Indaba is then presupposed upon those specific instances. We had together, as well as you mentioned in your introduction, that we pulled not only industry leaders, we pulled solo practitioners, as well as policymakers, both from National Treasury and from SARS, to engage in active dialogue as to how taxpayers and tax practitioners can assist with alleviating not only the SARS but the Treasury with the needed funding that is required to keep the country going.
Tax reform, that's a key buzzword and buzz phrase as far as tax in the country is concerned. Could you point out for us some of the key tax reform proposals that came out of the Indaba and those that you believe could have the biggest impact on South Africa's economy, and this obviously in the backdrop of the heavy debt that the country is in?
Excellent question. So, although we didn't completely unpack the various types of reforms that we require, it was an active dialogue as what SARS and National Treasury could do. We know that the draft tax bills are going to be coming out imminently from the National Treasury, which sets out proposals as to what SARS and Treasury intend on amending technically in the legislation in order to close loopholes of base erosion or stripping the fiscus of money that is due to it. What we did discuss, though, is how tax practitioners and taxpayers are enabled to work collaboratively with SARS that the right amount of tax is paid. We did tinker. There was a particular panel discussion on the first day where we had the Director General of Tax and Financial Policy from the National Treasury, Mr. Chris Axelson, unpack for us why the VAT, for example, was used as a way to fund the fiscus. We looked at things like the high net worth individuals. Could a wealth tax be something that is on the card? And notwithstanding all the different types of reforms we discussed, the main theme that came out is that we could be raising taxes. We could be taxing our way out of growth. What we need to do now is enable everybody to collect the right amount of tax to ensure that everybody pays their fair share.
How did the discussions address the challenge of the really high tax burden that the country has? And I ask this in relative to government benefits.
So we did discuss even in the first day where we had the broader topics. There was a topic there about budget and tax reform. Which way do we go? We do understand that, especially in Budget 3.0, the minister did announce that there's going to be an exercise undertaken to unlock about 312 billion rand in wasteful and unfruitful expenditure that is taking place. And those sorts of discussions were had as to what exactly taxpayers can do to fund or assist government in order to unlock those types of funding in order to drive funding for the economy. What we do note there is that there are very high tax to GDP ratios in South Africa. It's not looking very good, and we use about 22 cents every rand to fund debt service costs. It was brought out from the discussion with Mr. Chris Axelson that this is a trajectory, even the keynote address from the Deputy Commissioner, Dr. Makubu, that this is not a trajectory that we need to be on as a nation. And therefore, even though there are government, benefits and expenditure, we are comforted to see the Treasury is looking at how to strip out all that wasteful expenditure and reduce on that. But the conversations that we had around was how we as taxpayers and practitioners can assist National Treasury and SARS to unlock and educate our clients that the right amount of tax is paid and that they can collect it in order to fund the fiscus.
And that's so important that you're pointing out there, Tumeti, the role that tax practitioners play in helping clients navigate the complexities of the tax environment. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that, some of the other advice that came out in relation to that?
So from a tax perspective, obviously legislating in terms of Section 240 of the Tax Administration Act that we need to be registered with SARS in order for us to provide advice. In fact, Thami, there was a case in Cape Town recently where there was a bogus tax practitioner who's providing advice to a client, stripped the fiscus of 60,000 rand, and SARS took that person to court, and direct imprisonment of 3 years was meted out in that case. So it's essential that tax practitioners are not only above board with their own taxes, which is something we brought out from this Indaba this year, but they need to assist their clients to be compliant and pay the right amount of taxes. So the topics that we had unpacked, not only from a broader perspective, but on day 2, we honed in on specific technical aspects of corporate and international tax. Today, we looked at personal income tax and tax administration to equip them with the knowledge that they need so they can service their clients. For example, today we had a panel discussion on Section 164 of the Tax Administration Act that deals with the concept of paying now and arguing later. We had SARS officials on that panel. As you know, currently, Thami, what happens is that SARS will, effectively wake up in the morning and taxpayers realize that money is gone from their bank accounts because SARS has taken it. If you are objecting an assessment from SARS, and before you can even reach an agreement, SARS says, no, you pay now and then you will argue later. So we had constructive dialogue with them to show SARS that this might not be the best approach to take, but we also educated our practitioners, as we do on an ongoing basis, to say you still have your obligations that you must comply with from a professional perspective, and you need to educate your clients and contribute to the fiscus.
The next question I want to ask you, Kutumeti, is perhaps somehow related to this in many ways. Tax discussions and tax debates do not take place in a vacuum. There's always the backdrop of the political climate. And I wonder how the current political climate influences the tax policy debates that are being held and also the implementation of those reforms.
Excellent question. So on the first day, we actually had the Honorable Deputy Minister Asha Sarapen join us, as well as a member of the Standing Committee of Finance, Mr. Honorable Alan Beasley, and we unpacked that very topic, that how tax looks now in this changed, politically heated, driven climate. We acknowledged in that discussion that, of course, it has changed from what it was previously, where we had just one party run through and the budget would only have a 1.0, but now we have multiple partners that are sitting at the table. In that discussion, what comforted me is seeing that the National Treasury, or even the Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, took off the hat of being affiliated to a certain party and mentioned there that even from a parliamentary perspective in Honorable Beasley, it is not about a political party mandate, but when they sit around the table, although it's purported not to be so, they try to reach consensus that will work for the country, irrespective of what your political affiliation is. Of course, we cannot understate the fact that we live in a time where it is politically charged. It is a heated political climate. Everybody is trying to obviously service their voter base. But that discussion brought out that the National Treasury does not take sides. It is about moving forward as a country, ensuring that the policy works for everybody who lives in South Africa. So even though we had a budget 1.0, 2.0, and eventually landed on a 3.0, that was
and that was a first for us, you know. It really was a first for us. We've never been in that kind of situation.
Yeah, and that was actually a good thing, because on the face of it, you would say, this is an Armageddon event. This has never happened before. But that showed that everybody was getting around the table. They had to communicate. They had to reach consensus, so that we ended up in a situation where we all can benefit. In that discussion too, and the previous discussion with Mr. Axelson and in Pumlopiani from Alex Forbes, we raised the issue that we can't run away from the fact that we need to raise taxes. Taxes is the way that we're going to drive the economy. But the shift is moving from just taxing the base to collecting the money it's there. And if everything does go well and the SARS collects the money that they've been mandated to do, we might not even see a tax increase in the next year. So there are the political debates that are going on, but we were assured by virtue of that discussion that the HATS is not about a political mandate, but it's actually about driving the country forward.
We've just had the last quarter results coming out from the quarterly labor force survey, Kitumeti. And I wonder how the results of that nature inform the discussions that you're having and the decisions that are going to be made as far as whether or not taxes are going to be increased. Because once again, we're seeing, quite a significant rise in unemployment. So with more and more South Africans being outside of, the employment strata and space, how is that going to inform or influence the decisions that are being made on your side?
Excellent question. So it's twofold here. It's a two-pronged thing. With I think it's 33%, if I checked, at 33 or odd, which is actually quite high for this quarter. There is a balance now that the Treasury and the SARS must now look at, because we need to still fund infrastructure, SRD grants. There's actually a court case in the North Gauteng division of the High Court that said that the Department of Social Justice, Social Development, as well as the Treasury, should find money in order to make sure that SRD grant is actually made permanent. So they've got all these pressures that are on their pockets as well, and they have to sit around the table and find money. And now with the figures coming out that it's about 33%, which is quite high, of people that are unemployed, they've got to find, some sort of funding to assist those unemployed South Africans to be able to participate in the economy or to survive on a daily basis. That is where the collection drive from SARS comes in, because when we pay the right amount of tax and they collect, that tax gap is estimated about 800 billion rand. If we can collect that money, we can pump that money into developing or unlocking infrastructure, which is one of the panel discussions that we had here that was chaired by Olebogen Ramatlhodi from Deloitte. we can then unlock infrastructure, people can get employed, and that number, that percentage can come down steadily over the years. But it all comes down to everybody paying the right amount of taxes as we educate our members and tax practitioners here at the Indaba and continually over the year, that we must comply with our obligations so that the SARS and the Treasury can unlock infrastructure, pump money into the economy so more people can work and participate therein to grow as a country.
Kate Dumetsi Sesana, we'll leave it at that for today. Certainly, it's a moving train. It never stops, the kind of discussions that we're having, because the economy is constantly, in flux and movement as well. But thank you so much for keeping us abreast of the developments, as well as some of the key discussions that took place at the South Africa Institute of Taxation, Tax Indaba, which wrapped up this afternoon. We thank you for your time, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. She takes us to exactly 28 minutes after 4 p.m.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersun-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa.
The SABC is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-registration platform. Vendors wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Vendors are able to access this platform on our website, which is www.sabc.co.za/SABC/. And you'll find all the information you need under e-tenders or self-register at https://etender.sabc.co.za and follow the prompts from there. Visit the SABC social media pages for more details.
African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
Let's take a look now at your latest market indicators with Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Good afternoon. In your business indicators this hour, $1 is trading at 17 rand 66 in South Africa. In Botswana is trading at 13.33. Namibia it is trading at 17 Namibian dollars 659. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 23 kwacha to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 429. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 139 birr 701. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 543. And in Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 528. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 535. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 48 Egyptian pound 43. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 89. In Algeria, it is trading at 129 dinar 269. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 8 dirham 957. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,870 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,358 and platinum at $1,334 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $66.16 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipo Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And for your latest business of sport, here is Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon, Thami. We begin with tennis news in the business of sport. Traditionally, August marks the most exciting phase in the tennis fraternity because of the US Open, the last Grand Slam of the calendar. Every tournament in the run-up to the marquee event is followed closely as they help players prepare for the American major competition. The Cincinnati Open 2025 is one such preparatory event that sees a host of stars on the court. According to a report by the Perfect Tennis, the Cincinnati Open 2025 prize money pool for the ATP Tour stands at $9.19 million. On the other hand, the WTA Tour purse is $5.15 million. There has been a 35.3% and 60.4% rise in the amounts of the ATP Tour and the WTA Tour respectively from last year. Here's the complete breakdown of the payout structure. Men's singles champions, $1.12 million. Runners-up, $597,890. Women's singles champions, $752,275. And runners-up, $391,600. Now, football news. Remo Stars owner, that's a Nigerian side, Honorable Kunle Soname, says there's not enough money in the Nigerian league for the nation to compete on the continent. Despite being the defending champions of the league, Soname stated that Nigeria clubs will be defeated 7 out of 10 times if a matchup occurs. Our correspondent, Thami Ngubeni, reports.
In what could be a warning that Remo Stars may not find the going easy when they compete in the CAF Champions League this season. So I may opine that money circulating in Nigeria's domestic football sector is insufficient for a successful continental campaign. He further pointed out that players in Nigeria Professional Football League and PFL clubs will be up against opponents who are better motivated with higher salaries and welfare packages and the age most of them have against the country's representatives.
Soname says it will be hard for a Nigerian team to compete at the same level with their counterparts in other countries who earn exorbitant amount of salaries. Ngubeni has more.
Soname, who is a major shareholder at the UD Firenze of Portugal, stressed there is not enough money in this game for us in Nigeria. For us to compete with those guys, the money is simply not enough. He went on to state an example that happened with his team when they were knocked out of both the CAF Confederation Cup and then Champions League in back-to-back years by Asfar of Morocco, whose players, he noted, earn far much more than what any Nigerian club can pay.
Now, basketball news. The 2025 FIBA Women's Afro-Basket winning Nigerian team, the D Tigress, received a cash prize of $100,000 per player, as well as national honors and property. The technical crew also received a cash reward with $50,000 equivalent for the coach and each member. The FIBA Afro-Basket 2025, underway until the 24th of August, does not publicly disclose specific prize money amounts for the tournament. And in football news, it is Barcelona that are racing against time to secure the registration of new signings, Marcus Rashford and John Garcia, ahead of the La Liga opener against Mallorca this Saturday. Barcelona and United completed a deal that sees Rashford permanently staying at Camp Nou for just $41 million if he impresses during the 2025-2026 season. Club President Joan Laporta has expressed delight after finalizing key financial operations to ensure compliance with La Liga's regulation. The former Manchester United star is eager to make his official debut at Mallorca, with Barcelona providing regular updates to keep him and other unregistered players reassured. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thank you to Figile Lingwati as well as Nosipho Zuma. They're taking us to exactly 4:37 Central African time. Still coming up for you this afternoon, a look at the latest market developments. We'll be joined by Lindile Malchas, investment strategist at Absa Investment, looking at what economic releases the markets are expecting this week, as well as performances from the markets. Also coming up, Africa 50, which is currently underway in Maputo, Mozambique. This is a high-level gathering of investors, multilateral institutions, as well as government leaders. In the meantime, you're most welcome to continue engaging with us to share your thoughts or your stories, your comments on X, Instagram and YouTube. You'll find us at Channel Africa 1, and on Facebook we are at Channel Africa. A very good afternoon to you, Africa.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Now, amid ongoing geopolitical tensions as well as global trade uncertainties, delegates at the 2025 South Africa-Pakistan Trade Summit are highlighting the potential of stronger bilateral trade, this to bolster both the economies. The two-day event has brought together government officials, business leaders, as well as key stakeholders from both the nations, and the entire objective is to explore new opportunities for economic cooperation. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa has the details.
Against the backdrop of rising geopolitical tensions and shifting global trade dynamics, the 2025 South Africa-Pakistan Trade Summit has taken center stage in efforts to strengthen economic ties between the two countries. Charles Manu is the director of Invest in South Africa.
And I believe that Pakistan and the region presents a huge opportunity for us as South Africans to diversify our business into those regions, as well as creating opportunities for Pakistani business to take advantage of South Africa as the gateway into Africa to grow their businesses. We were quite excited when we heard the announcement in 2017 that Pakistan introduced the Engage Africa program.
Over the past 2 days, delegates have engaged in robust discussions aimed at unlocking trade and investment opportunities, particularly for small and emerging businesses. Manu describes South Africa as the gateway to Africa and urges Pakistan to seize the opportunity to invest its trade and investment footprint on the continent.
We are, of course, Africa's most industrialized economy. We have a well-diversified economic structure in terms of how our economy is put together. We are one of the most open economies in the world. You'll see that our ratio to exports to imports exceeds 58%, and that is quite high globally. We are endowed with natural resources. We have an abundance of platinum, manganese, and other critical minerals. And we have a very sophisticated banking sector. And of course, South Africa serves as a hub for innovation, technology, and fintech.
As the summit draws to a close, Yunus Hussain, Deputy Director for Inward Investment Traction, emphasized that the event must go beyond dialogue, committing to concrete action and follow through.
In all aspects, I have received appreciation in various occasions from our President as well, His Excellency Mr. Ramaphosa. In closing, I can also once again thank you, our entire team of Federation, our partners, sponsors, and all the delegations for making this summit possible. May this gathering mark the beginning of a new chapter in Pakistan-South Africa relations, one built on friendship, opportunity, and lasting the cooperation. Shukriya. Thank you so much.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Simos in Johannesburg.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 4:41 Central African time as we turn our focus now to Maputo, Mozambique, where the Africa 50 General Shareholders Meeting is currently underway. Now, Africa 50 is a platform that brings together a high-level network of investors, multilateral institutions, as well as government leaders, and their objective is to shape the future of infrastructure development in Africa. This year's General Shareholders Meeting, which is hosted by the government of Mozambique, is taking place under a heightened global uncertainty as well as shifting geopolitical dynamics. To break down the details of this is SABC News reporter Kaelihle Khumalo. Good to have you with us, Kaelihle. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Thami, and good afternoon to you.
So what is the mandate of Africa 50 and who exactly are they?
Well, essentially, Thami, this is a very key entity. So it is a brainchild of the African Development Bank. Essentially, their role is all about making sure that Africa is able to roll out the infrastructure. As you know, that's one of the major challenges, major impediments for Africa's economic growth has to do with the gaps when it comes to the infrastructure that is not so seamless. So since its establishment, so you have seen so many member states really joining it, making sure that, for example, they get on board on issues around energy, the issues around connectivity, especially where we are located, Thami, in Mozambique. This is a country that has had some challenges, but now the vision with the new administration led by President Daniel Chapo, they want to make sure that Mozambique becomes a hub of some sorts for logistics, for connectivity, making sure that there is a very seamless movement from the eastern parts of the continent all the way to the southern parts of Africa. For example, they do talk about the corridors of transportation from right here in the port of Maputo, making sure that the landlocked countries, the likes of Zambia, Malawi, they are able to access these facilities. So that's a broader vision of Africa 50. And it's quite a very massive task that they have. But they say that for them, they also promote the collaboration of the private sector and the public sector as well. But also, this is a very key institution for the African continent.
And how does the Africa 50 work with the rest of the multilateral financial institutions on the African continent?
I mean, for example, they do have a partnership with some central banks in the continent and some of the very key financial institutions, Thami, especially now because you have all these geopolitical shifts where the whole issue of the mobilization of the domestic resources is quite a very big issue. In fact, that was the emphasis that was made by the leader of this particular institution, Africa 50, saying that it's high time that Africa is not relying so much on the ODA, but mobilize its own resources so that the continent can deal with all these challenges.
And you did discuss some of the areas of concern that were discussed during the summit, like public-private collaborations and partnerships. Could you break that down for us a bit more on some of the key issues that were brought up?
I mean, Africa 50 is a very unique institution, Thami, in a sense that within the institution itself, you do have the representatives from the private sector, but also the public sector as well. So they say that it's quite important because if you talk about really transforming the infrastructure agenda in the continent, these two, they really do need each other. So, for example, if you do have ports, but also something that is very key is that it's quite fundamental to make sure that they do have the climate resilient infrastructure, especially now because climate change also, it is a very big issue. I mean, for example, when you look at the case of Mozambique, they've had quite a number of instances from the cyclones that are so vicious because of the very ever-changing climate condition. So it's quite important for them to work together, but also making sure that there's quite financing that is done. In fact, a couple of MOUs, Thami, have been signed today by, for example, the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretary General Wamkele Mene alongside Africa 50. So it's all about really making sure that they do forge these partnerships in making sure that they're able to overcome these issues.
And you mentioned infrastructure development on the continent. That certainly is one of the key objectives of the continent and many different structures that are involved in ensuring that there's trade and collaboration amongst the various countries. What are the strides that have been made in this regard?
I mean, for example, Thami, there's quite a lot that they are doing here in Mozambique when it comes to the energy project. As you know, that this country, they do have a substantial amount of gas. So, but also even when it comes to the hydroelectric dam, but also even in so many other parts of the continent in terms of the issues around energy. That appears to be really a very strong area of emphasis, Thami, especially because for Africa, it's quite a huge indictment that you still do have over 600 million Africans without any access to energy. So it's all about bridging those gaps, but also in the main in making sure that, for example, when it comes to transportation, they also prioritize those issues in terms of the movement in the borders. As you know, that congestion, it is a very big issue. So now the delegates are really looking at ways of making sure that how do you make sure that there's seamless movement in the borders. But obviously it's quite a very big task for these delegates, Thami, in terms of making sure that they bring these synergies across, but dealing with all these common challenges that they face.
Well, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Kailihle Khumalo, thank you very much for that update on the Africa 50 General Shareholders Meeting currently underway in Maputo, Mozambique.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Kailihle Khumalo there. And you'll remember that the Africa 50 is comprised of over 30 African countries, the African Development Bank and 2 African central banks. The areas of focus being, as Kailihle mentioned, their energy. That's really huge on their agenda, particularly renewable energy, transport, also a big sector, ICT, water and urban development. Really, the mission is to accelerate infrastructure delivery on the African continent, focusing on project finance as well as project development. It is exactly 4:49 Central African time. Still coming up, a conversation with Lindile Malchas as we are taken through the market performances and movements.
Annika Longi sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheky Frey qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça, on a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheky?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:50 Central African time. Joining us this afternoon for a look at the latest business and financial market developments is Lindile Malchas, investment strategist at Absa Investments. Good to have you with us once again, Lindile.
Good afternoon, Thami, and always a pleasure to be on the show.
It certainly is. So, would you unpack for us the latest performance of both the global and local markets?
So in terms of performance, we are seeing markets trading higher today. So we are seeing green across the board. In terms of the leaders, it has been from the Chinese shares, mainly being the Hang Seng, That is up about 2.5% so far today. Moving over to Europe, seeing the Euro stocks, they outperform the FTSE 100. So Euro stocks is up by about 0.9%. FTSE 100 up by a more marginal 0.1%. And then bringing it back to our local markets, you are seeing local markets tracking global market movements higher. The all share is up about 1% so far today. And this has been driven by gains in financials and industrials, whilst we are seeing resources recording more marginal gains, and they are sort of down for the week to date. And then look at the local currency, the rand still performing quite strongly, now trading below 17 rand 50, so around 17 rand 48 to the dollar.
I'm wondering if the tariffs and the solidification of that has actually impacted both global and local markets at all. Have the markets reacted as anticipated?
Yeah, so certainly I think markets have been a bit more nervous about tariffs, and they have been waiting for more certainty. So as you've seen, some of the developments have been coming out positive from some of the countries. So we've seen lower tariffs than what markets had anticipated. And then also looking at some of the economic data that has come out and that would have driven a bit more optimism in the markets was that US inflation yesterday came in steady at about 2.7%. This was positive because markets are expecting the inflation to essentially climb from where it was. And on the back of that, markets are essentially pricing in or becoming more optimistic around the US Fed cutting rates at their September meeting. So a lot of positivity that has been driving markets higher.
So let's look at some of the company performances and some of the stocks. We're seeing Boxer Limited. They delivered another strong performance for the period. Could you unpack some of the key takeaways and how the markets reacted?
Yes, so certainly when it comes to Boxer, they have been the main performer from the Pick and Pay stable, and that is they do play amongst the lower LSM segment. And on the back of that, there has been a lot of growth, particularly within the stores. They're seeing quite strong growth within the liquor stores, but also within the traditional stores as well. And also speaking to the more tougher economic environment where discount retailers are doing quite well. And there is quite a lot of plans in place by the company to sort of continue on their growth path and continue ultimately rolling out more stores. So we do see there more as of a competition for a company such as ShopRite, but mainly on the USave component as well. And yeah, the share has performed in line with what markets have anticipated in terms of the results we are seeing as well.
And as far as the largest stockpile increases for this for today, I wonder if you've been looking at that. For example, Naspers has been performing quite well. Dis-Chem also, I guess Capitec too.
Yeah, so Naspers has been predominantly driven by what's been happening in Tencent, which is based in China. That has had far less of an impact from things such as tariffs because it's mainly on the gaming front. And in terms of the performance that has been that we have been seeing essentially in our local markets, it has predominantly been coming from the resources counters, mainly gold and platinum, and then also Naspers to a certain extent. And even if you look at the results, we are starting to see a broader contribution from the Naspers results. So some of the e-commerce business as well starting to print a bit more profit, and that ultimately has led to that positivity within that. Where firstly we are seeing mainly Tencent driving some of the performance within the company, but we're seeing a much more broader participation from some of the investee companies as well.
And what are the economic releases that the markets are expecting this week?
Yeah, so the key one this week was in terms of the US inflation. Then, as I'd mentioned, that did come in as a positive surprise to what markets are anticipating. Then from a South African perspective, we also saw the mining production that's slowing to about 0.2% month on month in June, but down from a very strong 3.9% month on month in the previous figure. Then on a quarterly basis, quite positive to see mining coming in at 3.9% quarter on quarter, and you do expect that to contribute positively to GDP, and also reversing the contraction that we had seen in the first quarter. So those were some of the key things that did come out this week.
Lindy de Malchas, thank you so much for the latest business and financial market developments for this day. Have yourself a splendid evening further.
Thanks. Cheers, Thami.
Have a good one. That's Lindy Lemalchas, investment strategist at APSA in Investments, highlighting some of the key developments today. He did mention NASPAS and Process. As far as media and technology is concerned, they are the leading standout performers in the energy space. Sasol also continued quite a strong upward movement. As far as banks and financials are concerned, we've seen Capitec as well as a strengthening in Nedbank, APSA, as well as Standard Bank. So certainly some positive sentiments there in the financial sector. Retail and services wise, we see Mr. Price, Vodacom, as well as Dis-Chem showing some solid gains. They're pointing to some consumer resilience. That's as far as South Africa is concerned. It is exactly 4:57 Central African time, and that's how we wrap up today's Africa in Business. But before we say goodbye to you, we say hello to Vue d'Afrique. Bonjour.
Bonjour. We say hello to Annika Langy. Let me remind you again today.
Annika Langy with Vue d'Afrique, right?
Oh,
the entire team is here.
Alors, bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Il s'agira tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique du Bénin, où le compte à rebours a commencé pour la succession de Patrice Talon avec la publication du calendrier électoral par la Commission électorale nationale autonome. Et nous parlerons également de la commémoration ce 13 août du 65e anniversaire de l'indépendance de la République centrafricaine dans un contexte de vives tensions politiques. Alors, il s'agira de ça et également d'autres sujets. Merci beaucoup, Thami.
Merci beaucoup. That's Annie Longy there. And it's exactly 4:58 Central African time. See you again, same time, same place tomorrow for Africa in Business. Thank you to our fabulous team. Joalane Tulengwape on the news, economics desk, Lusipo Zuma, and Figile Lingwati there on the sport. Our producer, Mabubu Loka, technical producer, Ndando Lutuli, and social media talent, Butelezi. I'm Thami Ngubeni, and this has been Africa in Business for Channel Africa.